Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown. This one is from the ESL Total War Warhammer Season 1 Finals between Ondjage and Daman. The series is a best of 5, and while I don't have the first battle, which Daman won, I do have the rest of the series. Ultimately, the winner of Season 1 walked away with a beautiful, limited collector's edition, so let's take a look at exactly how they won it. And if you'd like to sign up and compete in Season 2, check out the link in the description below. In this second game of the best of 5, Ondjage plays as the Empire, with the General of the Empire in charge, a Jade Wizard, an Amber Wizard, 3 units of Spearmen ranked up to rank 1, 3 units of Flagellants, the Tattersouls, a unit of Greatswords, 2 units of Free Company Militia, Sterlin's Revenge, a unit of Demigryph Knights with Halberds, and the Royal Altdorf Griffites. Daman brings in the Beastmen with Morgur in charge, alongside a Bray Shaman of Beasts, 2 Gorbulls, 2 units of Ungor Spearmen, 4 units of Goreherd with shields, 1 ranked up to rank 1, 4 units of Centaurs with great weapons, and 2 units of Chaos Warhounds with poison. Alright, as always, we're going to start with a conversation about layouts now. Both players have put their armies on the right side of the battlefield, taking positions on top of the hills on, well, either side of the battlefield. First things first, though, let's look at the Empire up close. They have a pretty defensive layout. The Flagellants up front, then to either side we have the Spearmen as well, blocking off the flanks, and then the Tattersouls back here, able to close off this gap over here if necessary, and the Spearmen on the right flank, able to do the same if the time comes, if any flanking maneuvers start to move in. In the center, we have the Free Company Militia as well as Sterlin's Revenge, providing range support, and above them we've got the Amber Wizard, as well as the General of the Empire and the Jade Wizard on foot back here as well. All the way at the back, we have the Demigryph Knights with Halberds, the Royal Altdorf Griffites, and the Swordsmen, or rather the Greatswords, right in between them. Greatswords able to respond wherever necessary to provide support their anti-infantry and armor-piercing capabilities, and the Demigryph Knights, as well as the Royal Altdorf Griffites, they're able to sort of respond to any flanking maneuvers that are coming in from any angle, as well as, perform flanking maneuvers of their own, of course. Now, let's take a look at the Beastmen. These guys also have a pretty defensive layout, but a bit more on the aggressive side. Up front, we have all the Goreherd with shields, providing a straight line. Then on either side, we have the Ungor Spearmen as well, again, just in case any flanking maneuvers come in. We do have the Centaurs with great weapons off to the flank, and this is what I mean by slightly more aggressive. They're more easily able to push forward and intercept any incoming units, or come in from the flanks if necessary, or the rears as required. Meanwhile, in the formation itself, we do have the Gorbull on either flank, embedded in with some of these Goreherd themselves, just to provide some strength to either end. And in the center, we have, of course, Morgur himself, as well as the Bray Shaman. So they're in the middle, sort of helping strengthen out the center here. Now back here, we've got 1 unit of Chaos Warhounds with poison, and the other unit is all the way up here. Interesting placement there. It's right at the edge of the map, all the way. If we can zoom in, you can see it's right at the edge of the map. They are hidden in this little sort of collection of trees or shrubs, if you will. And that's an interesting position, because if the enemy has any artillery or range units, they can very quickly respond. So if they had any artillery, they could, dive in as soon as the army sort of separates. Or if they didn't and they just had range units, they can dive in from the rear, get that morale damage, get the physical damage, and of course, poison damage. Now, that tells me that there was clear suspicion that the deployment was going to take place on the hilltop over here. Otherwise, deploying a unit in those woods when you suspect your enemy will deploy over here, big mistake, because that's a huge gap to cover, of course. So, with some confidence, I think that placement was made. Now, let's take a look at how this breaks down. Both armies pushing forward almost right away to the base of their respective hills. Neither army has any artillery or any sort of really long-range capabilities, so they both have to push towards each other. And right away you'll see the General of the Empire and the Amber Wizard, they do push out to sort of scout, and that's a good idea. Vision is extremely important, and when you're up against the Beastmen, you want to make sure there aren't any units stalking around or any range units sort of hiding back here to reveal themselves when you're engaged in sort of a, well, unfortunate situation. Now, as the Amber Wizard and the General of the Empire are flying in, you'll notice the formation does change up a little bit. These Centaurs with great weapons, they do get pulled back over here just to provide some density in the center to maybe try and pin these guys down if they decide to dive in anywhere, and have the Spearmen as well as the Gorbull sort of shut them down and close them off nice and early if they do decide to come back here. So just a little bit of adjustment as these guys fly in. And I do also want to mention the Amber Wizard, kind of interestingly, doesn't actually have any magic. The Amber Wizard has the ability to encourage as well as cause fear and terror, and that's the only reason the Amber Wizard is here, not actually casting any magic. Meanwhile, back here, you'll notice as these Royal Altdorf Griffites do push out, and the Demigryph Knights on this side do push out as well, you'll see that a little bit of concern over here with the Chaos Warhounds, potentially that they'd get spotted. They don't get spotted until they leave, but that's the safer call. You want to make sure that you don't leave them here for too long, because what could happen is the Royal Altdorf Griffites might spot them, go in and just manage to cut them off, their only route of escape, and shut down a pretty valuable unit. Not an expensive unit by any means, but the poison damage can be extremely valuable, especially as the battle goes on. So good move there, pulling those Chaos Warhounds back to safety and making sure that, you know, if by any chance they got spotted, they wouldn't get shut down and intercepted so early on in the game. Now, as I mentioned as well, these Demigryph Knights as well moving off to the side, sort of responding to that widespread layout that we saw earlier, and making sure that the anti-large capabilities are on either end in a more sort of solid fashion. Now back here, you'll notice the General and the Amber Wizard, they've done their scout really quickly. They've seen that there is no range unit waiting to, you know, pounce, as it were. So they're able to fly around and just keep an eye up there. There's no reason for them to move around or anything, so they are able to stay up there. Meanwhile, over here, you'll notice the Flock of Doom does go down, and that's a good target. You do want to hit the Flagellants with that, because these guys are unbreakable, so you have to kill every single one of them. So good call there, dropping that on the Flagellants, making sure they take a little bit of damage, and you'll notice, in fact, Ondjage does respond. He does try to clear his Flagellants out, but realizes that he's noticed that a little bit too late, doesn't need to bother so much, and then just pushes forward, because the longer this gap stays, the longer there is this distance between the two armies, the more time the Beastmen have to access the Winds of Magic, regenerate the Winds of Magic, and cast more of those Flocks of Doom. So now is the time to start applying some pressure. You'll also notice on either flank now a little bit of a change here in terms of deployment. The Demigryph Knights and the Spearmen have formed up as sort of a combined arms unit. These two guys together create a good interlocking system. If a large anti-large unit comes in here from the enemy, then we've got the Spearmen that are anti-large but small units themselves, so they don't take as much damage from a large anti-large unit. Whereas the Royal Altdorf Griffites are on the other side, the Demigryph Knights with halberds, even though they're anti-large themselves, another large anti-large unit can cause them some hurt. So having this as a sort of pairing is great, because you can handle large and small anti-large units if they come in to attack you. It helps prevent your high-value units like the Demigryph Knights with halberds being picked off too easily by a well-composed enemy army. Now, back to full speed here, you'll notice the Beastmen slowly creeping back up. I think it's just to buy themselves a little bit more time, a little bit more distance, again, to regenerate some of those Winds of Magic and get another cast off of the Flock of Doom. And again, just flying around, keeping an eye out just in case something was hiding somewhere, making sure nothing just pops out and surprises the Empire's troops. And you'll notice now getting into sort of full formation here, ready to push forward. The Flagellants still staying up here. These guys are together, and another Flock of Doom goes down as well, this time targeting the ground in the middle here, trying to hurt the Free Company Militia as well as the Flagellants. In my personal opinion, not the best call. A good idea would be to actually cast on perhaps these Flagellants here, or perhaps in this area over here, to try and spread some of that damage, or again, just try to finish off some of these guys. Already some damage done up front here. Would have been better to continue doing that up front, just because, again, these guys are unbreakable. They will stay and fight to the death, so whittle them down nice and early. But as I was saying, you'll see these guys have formed up, and they are trying to move together as well as possible. And meanwhile, the front of Flagellants hoping to hold the line, and these gunners trying to get away from each other, trying to get a little bit of distance, so when the enemy does come pummeling through and in, they're not all going to get bogged down very easily. Now over here, you'll notice sort of preparing for some aggression as well. Again, just taking a peek, pulling back, not committing just yet, waiting to see exactly how the Empire is going to approach the situation. And again, I think pulling back just to get a little bit more distance, maybe a little bit more Winds of Magic to get another Flock of Doom down before lines meet. Again, that initial damage can be extremely helpful, and it looks like one of the overcasts did cause a little bit of damage to the Bray Shaman, but that's not going to cause too much concern. You'll notice also, with the General of the Empire and the Amber Wizard flying around in this area, it's probably causing a little bit of concern for the Beastmen. They need to be careful that these guys aren't able to freely dive down into, for example, the Chaos Warhounds, or take out, one of these Gore Herd easily. So it does cause the Beastmen some concern. They do have to keep an eye out on that as well as the front. So I'm guessing that's why this sort of maneuvering was taking place, just to keep the enemy on their toes. And again, just pushing forward slowly but surely. You'll notice these guys are pushing in, possibly to get ready for a flanking maneuver, possibly just to force the Beastmen to get a little bit wider. And again, these guys not really committing to an attack or anything, but just staying there so that the Beastmen have to consider the fact that, well, they're there. Now finally, you'll see some aggression. It looks like the Beastmen, hungry for battle as they are a little tired of waiting, and they are going to charge down the field. Now a couple of things do happen here. The Senegors with great weapons, they get a little bit of damage done to the Flagellants. They are trying to pierce through, get into the range units over here, and also shut down these Demigryph Knights. Now, when you've got 2 units of Senegors with great weapons, as well as Chaos Warhounds coming in towards your Demigryph Knights, you need to pull back. This is a very dangerous situation, and while these guys aren't anti-large, things like poison and the sheer mass and quantity of units coming in will do a lot of damage. So you'll see very quickly, as that charge hits, these guys get a lot of damage in there. That second charge especially gets a decent amount of damage in there. The surround comes in, causing a lot of morale damage as well, and of course the poison itself. Meanwhile, over here, we do have another Flock of Doom going down, trying to cause some damage again to these Free Company Militia as well as Sterling's Revenge. Again, the better target, I think, are the Flagellants. So I do understand, of course, over here, it's very slim picking, so that is probably the best cast because it'll obviously get the Flagellants and it'll also get a couple of other units. So probably the best position to cast that right now. Now over here, you'll notice these Demigryph Knights are basically taken care of, but as the General of the Empire comes in, that spells trouble for the Senegor with great weapons and the Chaos Warhound. So you'll notice that General does dive in, shuts down these Chaos Warhounds, and of course this range fire coming in as well from the side, trying to shut down those Chaos Warhounds too. Unfortunately, it looks like the General of the Empire, rather than finishing off the Chaos Warhounds, decides to go after the Gorbul. Gorbul is a very valuable target, of course, but it might have been good to just shut down those Chaos Warhounds as the opportunity did present itself. Now, the 2 Gorbul are busying themselves with... Let's slow it down for a second. The 2 Gorbul are busying themselves with the leadership that the Empire has on hand, and at the same time, you'll notice an Awakening of the Wood does go down here. Now again, Awakening of the Wood doesn't do a significant amount of damage by any means. It does cause a little bit of damage, but most importantly, it causes Life Bloom to activate. So right now, as that spell goes out, all of these units are under the effect of Life Bloom, which is giving them just a little bit more HP. And it's good to get those casts out nice and early, especially when you've got units like Demigryph Knights with Halberds, or, you know, Generals, single body units, because the Lore of Life doesn't bring people back to life. It just regenerates health if you're still alive. So with that said, let's move on. You'll notice a little bit of gunfire going down onto this Gorbul here, slowing it down from its charge, and a little bit of a mistake here. The Gorbul get pulled away from these beautiful, beautiful targets, so they should have been brought down to take out the ranged fire and shut it all down and make sure that morale damage isn't taking place anymore, but instead they're sent chasing after these Demigryph Knights with Halberds, and that's really not a good idea because they're not going to close that gap. They have much better work that they could be doing here. Now, we do have, of course, a Senegor with great weapons punching through instead, so, of course, we've got something covering for us, so to speak. These guys are able to punch into the great swords and cause a decent amount of damage, but really those 2 Gorbul could have finished off both of these units without much issue. Meanwhile, off to the right flank over here, you'll notice the Royal Altdorf Griffites finishing off these Chaos Warhounds with poison without much trouble. These Spearmen do come in to try and cause a little bit of damage, but really it was that magical combination of the 2 Senegors with great weapons as well as the Warhounds there that, well, sent the Demigryph Knights here running. So a similar combination was ready to go on the right flank as well, seen from the Empire's perspective, but just was not used. Now, we do have another Flock of Doom going down here as well, just to pair up with that charge in from the 2 Senegors with great weapons, trying to get rid of this great sword unit, cause a little bit of damage to this Free Company Militia, and again, would have been a good idea to just close down some of this ranged fire because that causes a lot of damage. Now, you'll notice they are firing into the Chaos Spawn over here, trying to get rid of them as quickly as possible, and meanwhile, the General of the Empire and the Amber Wizard flying around, providing support wherever they can, shutting down some of this cavalry, and also trying to get fear and terror working as well. You'll notice these guys get terrified just before they get, well, they get a little bit of a hit in there, but then they get terrified right off the field. So great move there, bringing the General and the Amber Wizard, not just for their damage capabilities, but also for their morale effects. Now, one thing I would say is it would have been a good idea to keep these guys separated. Have the General stay in this general area, you know, cause fear and terror here, and then bring the Amber Wizard up here and just make sure these guys all get terrified off, because With those units still alive, they're able to come back in and they could cause a lot of damage. So now, that's one thing to say for the Beastmen. They should have really paid attention and brought these guys in immediately, but more so for the Empire, they really could have gone out here and terrified some of these units off the battlefield. Meanwhile, over here, the Demigryph Knights have recovered and now they are picking away at the Gorbel, so good call there. Trying to retreat the Gorbel now, I suppose, trying to get them into something where they can be a bit more helpful, trying to dive them into the rear of these spearmen perhaps. Again, those Gorbel really should not have given chase there. Now another lifeblood goes down here as well, helping the Demigryph or the Royal Altdorf Gryphites get some of their health back, as well as the General of the Empire as well. He's been fighting a little bit, so very helpful cast there, good move there. And again, you do want to target units that have low individual counts, because it will help them more. So good cast there, making sure those important essential units stay alive. Now back here, that one Gorbel still engaged with the Demigryph Knights back there, taking a lot of damage, so not a good call. I should pull them back. Again, shut down some of this ranged fire especially. Now these Senegor with great weapons again diving in, but quickly shut down. Between the Amber Wizard and the Royal Altdorf Gryphites, those guys do not stand a chance. Routing now could be taken right off the field, and up here again you'll see Terror strikes and converts into a little bit of routing as well. You'll notice the Tattersouls and the Flagellants take very little damage ultimately. They're able to hold their ground and push right through. And now they can actually chase these guys out and away off the field if the Empire so chooses. So great move there. And now over here again, this Gorbel just able to sort of cycle charge in and out. And a very good Foe Seeker went off as well just before the first charge hit. But really just getting occupied with one unit, whereas both units could have been occupied and taken out of the game, taken care of very easily. Off to the left here, you'll notice as well the Amber Wizard and the General of the Empire trying to shut down this Gorbel over here, as well as these Senegors with great weapons, and the Royal Altdorf Gryphites come in to try and shut down this Gorbel as well. A lot of damage being done there very easily. Of course, these anti-large units are extremely capable when it comes to this kind of a thing, and of course the Gorbel is anti-large as well, but the Royal Altdorf Gryphites are significantly more capable, especially when they come charging in, as what happened here. The Sterling's Revenge here, now you'll see opening fire at the Chaos Spawn as well that got summoned in, trying to cause a lot of damage, and really Morgur could, well, there he goes. Brings in these Chaos Spawn and decides to send them in towards these ranged units again, just to shut them down. Range damage is extremely dangerous because it's not only physical, it is also to morale. Now these Spearmen here on their way out, a lot of these Beastmen unit on their way out, they could be brought back in, especially these Senegors with great weapons, but at this stage in the game, it is pretty late. I can see why it's all looking like it's going down in shambles now, especially with the Gorbel more or less taken care of. Royal Altdorf Gryphites chasing these guys down, just deciding to back away for some reason. I sincerely think that should have been shut down and taken care of. Meanwhile, over here, opening fire at the Chaos Spawn. General of the Empire comes in as well to try and kill these guys nice and early. This Gorbel here as well, one more volley could have killed him. Dives right through these handgunners here, the Free Company militia, sorry, and able to cause a little bit more hurt before ultimately the Beastmen decide that it's really not the time to fight anymore. This Chaos Spawn as well, trying to dive in. Up over here, you'd see another Flock of Doom goes down to try and take down these Flagellants, but ultimately this day has been won by the Empire by some pretty clever play. If the Beastmen were able to shut down the ranged fire, things could have gone very differently, because it was really the range fire that caused a lot of that morale damage. The Gorbel spent a lot of time chasing out those Demigryph Knights. That was wasted. Instead, they could have been sent into the Free Company militia and Sterling's Revenge just to kill them off and really cause a huge dent in the enemy army. But ultimately, it is a Pyrrhic victory for the Empire. Now, with this, the series became an even 1-1. Well played by both generals, as can be expected at this level, setting up for a very tense third game, which I'll be releasing shortly. And remember, if you'd like to compete in Season 2, I have a link in the description below where you can sign up. So, if you're feeling up to the task, make sure you do sign up, because that's what being a great general is about. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content, and keep submitting your battle replays. I always say this, I think it's a great way to learn, and it's always nice to see some great battles from the community highlighted. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.